The most dangerous kind of prejudice is the kind that smiles while it excludes you. Malik Carter had learned that lesson long before the gates of the Ashbourne Hills Country Club slid shut in front of him. Some people think racism always arrives loud, screaming, obvious, easy to point at. But Malik knew better. Sometimes it arrives in a pressed white uniform and a polite smile. Sometimes it arrives in the phrase, "There must be some misunderstanding." Sometimes it arrives with a clipboard, a security radio, and a locked gate to a pool your own name is printed on. And sometimes the people who try to humiliate you in public have no idea they're standing 1 second away from humiliating themselves. Before we get into this story, tell me where you're watching from today. And if you enjoy stories about resilience, justice, and people overcoming prejudice, subscribe and stay with me. The July heat in Brookhaven sat heavy over everything. It clung to the pavement, shimmered over parked cars, and turned the perfectly landscaped entrance of Ashbourne Hills Country Club into something almost unreal. The place looked less like a neighborhood amenity and more like a private resort designed to remind people exactly how much they paid to belong there. White stone columns framed the front gate. Hanging baskets of bright flowers swayed lightly in the warm breeze. There were polished brass letters by the entrance. Ashbourne Hills Private Residence Club. Beyond the gates sat the pool, a blue rectangle of water so still and clean it looked staged. White umbrellas, white lounge chairs, white towels folded with hotel precision. Children laughed at the shallow end, while adults with sunglasses and chilled drinks talked in the shade, as though nothing ugly could ever happen in a place that expensive. Malik Carter parked just outside the main entrance and turned off the engine. For a moment, he stayed still. In the back seat, his 8-year-old daughter Nia pressed both palms to the window and stared through the iron fencing with open wonder. "Daddy," she whispered, "it's huge." Beside her, his mother, Loretta Carter, adjusted her wide-brimmed hat and smiled softly. She was 68, elegant, observant, and the kind of woman who had survived enough disrespect to detect it before it was spoken aloud. "It better be huge," she said dryly. "You're paying enough HOA fees for 3 pools." Malik laughed under his breath. That was true. He had bought his home in Ashbourne Hills 11 months earlier. Not rented, bought. Every payment made on time. Every fee cleared. Every piece of paperwork submitted. He had spent 15 years building the kind of life people said they admired in speeches and doubted in practice when a black man actually had it. He owned a cybersecurity firm downtown. He employed 23 people. He had graduated top of his class. He had built his business from a folding table, a borrowed laptop, and years of sleeping less than 4 hours a night. And after years of work, he had finally done what he promised his late wife he would do. He bought a home with a yard, a safe neighborhood, good schools, tree-lined streets, a place where their daughter could grow up feeling secure. Ashbourne Hills had brochures full of words like community, excellence, family, legacy. What Malik would learn was that some communities love the idea of fairness, right up until fairness has a face they did not expect. He stepped out of the car first, then opened the back door for Nia. She jumped out in a bright yellow swimsuit covered in little suns, carrying a pink towel nearly as big as she was. Her excitement was too big for walking. She half-skipped toward the gate, sandals slapping the pavement. Loretta came next, slower, with her own towel draped over one arm and a paperback in the other. She was not there to swim. She was there to sit in the shade, watch her granddaughter play, and enjoy the kind of afternoon black families had always deserved without having to earn it twice. Malik locked the car and took one look at them both. This, he thought, is why I worked. Not for status, not for anybody's approval. For this, a normal summer afternoon. Nothing more, nothing less. The gate attendant stood under the covered entrance with a clipboard tucked against one hip. Her name tag read, Sharon. She was a white woman in her early 50s with short blonde hair, mirrored sunglasses, and the kind of professional smile that looked practiced rather than warm. She glanced first at Nia, then at Loretta, then finally at Malik. That order did not escape him. "Good afternoon," Malik said. Sharon returned the smile, though only technically. "Afternoon. We're here for the pool." He held up the resident access card attached to his keyring. Sharon took it between 2 fingers, glanced at it, then looked back at him. What address? 118 Wycliffe Lane. She scanned her clipboard, then scanned it again. Her expression changed almost imperceptibly. Not confusion, not quite. Recognition mixed with resistance. I'm sorry, she said. I'm not seeing you on the active pool membership list. Malik blinked once. That can't be right. Sharon gave a small shrug designed to appear neutral. Well, it's what I have here. Nia looked up at him. Daddy? He kept his tone easy. There's probably just a mistake. He reached into his wallet and handed Sharon his driver's license. She barely looked at it. Do you have your member wristbands? We were told residents can check in at the gate for the first visit and pick them up inside. She did not answer immediately. Instead, she looked over Malik's shoulder toward the parking lot, as if expecting someone else to emerge and explain him. The silence stretched. Then Sharon lowered her voice just enough to make it sound polite and said, This facility is private. The sentence landed like a slap dressed in manners. Malik felt his jaw tighten. Yes, he said evenly. I know. I live here. Sharon tapped the clipboard with one finger. Only residents and authorized guests are permitted. Loretta's eyes narrowed. Malik kept his face calm because his daughter was watching. I am a resident, he repeated. Sharon tilted her head with thin patience. Sir, I'm just following policy. That was when a white couple approached from the sidewalk behind them with two boys and a cooler. They walked right up beside Malik's family. Sharon's whole body language changed. Hi, Jennifer, she said brightly. Hi, Tom. No clipboard, no pause, no address verification. She opened the gate with one press of a button. The couple smiled and walked through. One of the boys glanced back at Nia, then at Malik, curious but silent. The gate closed again. Nia turned to her father. Why did they get to go in? The question was quiet, too quiet. Malik looked down at his daughter and felt something cold move through his chest. Because children ask the question, adults try to bury under procedure. He crouched slightly so his voice stayed level with hers. We're going to sort it out, he said. Loretta stepped forward. Her tone was soft, but there was steel in it. Now, why exactly was that family allowed in without showing anything? Sharon's mouth tightened. Mrs. Carter. Sharon nodded as though the name didn't matter. Regulars are often recognized on sight. Malik straightened. And I'm not recognized because? Sharon did not answer. Instead, she shifted to a different script. If there's an issue with your membership, you can contact the clubhouse office Monday through Friday. It's Saturday, Malik said. The pool is open now. My dues are current now. My residency is valid now. A young white lifeguard near the fence had begun watching. Then another. Then a woman under an umbrella nearby. Then a man in golf clothes coming from the clubhouse. This was how public humiliation worked. It gathered an audience before it gathered facts. Sharon sighed as though Malik were making her day difficult. Sir, if your name is not on the list, I cannot allow entry. Nia moved closer to Malik's leg and clutched her towel. Loretta set her book down on the check-in counter. Let's be plain, she said. Are you telling my son, a homeowner in this neighborhood, that he can't enter the pool he pays for? Sharon crossed her arms. I'm telling you I have procedures. That was when the man in golf clothes reached them. He was tall, broad in the shoulders, tanned in the curated way of people who spent a lot of time outdoors without doing much labor. His polo shirt bore the Ashbourne Hills crest. Silver hair, expensive watch, controlled expression. He looked first at Sharon. What seems to be the issue? Sharon relaxed slightly. Mr. Whitmore, this gentleman says he lives here, but he's not on today's pool membership list. The phrase "this gentleman" was delivered with distance, not respect. Mr. Whitmore turned to Malik. His smile was smooth and cool. I'm Daniel Whitmore, HOA board president. Of course he was, Malik thought. Daniel Whitmore extended no hand. Malik noticed that too. Malik Carter, he said. Resident, 118 Wycliffe Lane. Whitmore nodded with the bland confidence of someone used to being believed without evidence. Well, Mr. Carter, I'm sure this is just a clerical matter, but rules are rules. We can't compromise security. Security, another word that changed meaning depending on who was standing in front of a gate. Malik took a breath. I have ID. I have my resident access card. I can pull up my property tax records, deed, HOA statements, whatever you want. Whitmore smiled faintly. That won't be necessary. Then open the gate. Whitmore's expression sharpened almost invisibly. I'm afraid we can't just let anyone in because they insist they belong. There it was. Not loud, not vulgar, but there. Just let anyone in. Malik felt the air around him change. Behind Whitmore, more people had begun to watch openly now. A few white women in expensive cover-ups, a teenager with a soda, two older men with folded arms. Curiosity had tipped into spectacle. Loretta spoke first. Anyone? She repeated. Whitmore shifted his gaze to her with polite impatience. Ma'am, no one is accusing anyone of anything. That's exactly what you're doing, she said. Malik laid a hand gently on his mother's arm, not to silence her, to steady the moment. He knew how easily anger could be weaponized against him, how quickly a black man raising his voice became the story instead of the insult that caused it. Whitmore looked back to Malik. If you'd like, you can return with documentation Monday. Until then, I'm going to ask you and your family to step aside from the entrance. Nia looked up. Daddy, did we do something wrong? Every adult within earshot heard her, and still nobody moved, because prejudice survives on the hope that discomfort will remain private. Malik bent and picked up her towel where it had slipped. No, baby, he said softly. We didn't do anything wrong. Then he stood, looked Whitmore directly in the eye and said, You're making a mistake. Whitmore folded his arms. I don't believe I am. Malik pulled out his phone. Sharon's face hardened instantly. Sir, recording staff is not permitted. Malik didn't look at her. Good thing I'm not asking permission. Whitmore's tone dropped lower. I'd advise against escalating this. Malik hit record anyway. State your name and position, he said. Whitmore gave a short, humorless laugh. Excuse me? You're denying entry to a resident homeowner and his family at a private facility funded by resident dues. I'd like the record to reflect who made that decision. A murmur passed through the small crowd. Whitmore now looked less confident. Not guilty yet, just irritated that a man he'd placed beneath himself had stopped cooperating with humiliation. You're being dramatic, Whitmore said. No, Malik replied. You're being reckless. Then while the camera rolled, Malik turned it slightly to show the gate. Sharon, Whitmore, the witnesses, and his daughter standing in a swimsuit she had been excited to wear. My name is Malik Carter, he said clearly. I am the homeowner at 118 Wycliffe Lane. My HOA fees are current. My resident card is active. And I am currently being denied access to the Ashbourne Hills pool, while other residents are waved through without verification. That changed the crowd. Not much. Just enough. People became less comfortable standing too close. Because once a thing is documented, it begins to demand accountability. Whitmore stepped closer, voice tight. Turn that off. Malik held his ground. Open the gate. Whitmore looked at Sharon. Call security. Nia gasped. Loretta went still in a way Malik had seen only a few times in his life. The stillness older black people carried when memory and present-day insult fused together into something heavy and familiar. The radio on Sharon's hip crackled. A white security guard in a navy polo started walking fast from the clubhouse side. And that should have been the moment the humiliation became complete. The part of the story where the black family is forced to leave, quietly or in tears, while everyone around them tells themselves it was unfortunate but procedural. That should have been the moment. It wasn't. Because Ashbourne Hills had one thing none of the people at that gate had remembered. The neighborhood's annual summer social planning committee meeting had been moved indoors that morning because of heat warnings. And inside the clubhouse, connected to the outdoor projector that usually displayed pool rules and event notices on the far stucco wall, was a laptop synced to the HOA cloud drive. A laptop currently being used by Elise Warren. Elise Warren was white, 32, the neighborhood's communications coordinator, and one of those people who noticed details because she respected systems more than status. She had been in the clubhouse conference room preparing slides for the evening's family barbecue when she heard the commotion outside. At first she ignored it. Then she heard a child's voice ask, "Did we do something wrong?" That got her up from the chair. She walked to the window, saw the standoff at the gate, saw Daniel Whitmore standing in that posture he used when he wanted a conflict to look like order, and frowned. Then she did something Daniel Whitmore had never expected from someone in his orbit. She checked. Not feelings, not gossip, not assumptions. Records. She opened the resident database, typed 118 Wycliffe Lane, and there it was. Owner, Malik Carter. Status, verified. Dues, current. Pool access, active. Household members, 3. Elise stared at the screen. Then she scrolled further. There had been a system sync earlier that morning. The printout Sharon was using had not updated after 8 a.m. The live cloud list had. And the live cloud list did not merely include Malik Carter. It showed something more explosive, because the filter Sharon had been using was not alphabetical. It was a manually created weekend active sheet assembled the night before by Daniel Whitmore for expedited check-in. Elise opened that file, and what she saw made her stomach drop. 3 newly moved-in Black households were missing, all current, all eligible, all absent from the printed list. Every white household that had registered properly was there. Everyone. Elise looked back out the window at the gate, at Whitmore speaking with controlled authority, at the security guard now arriving, at a black child clinging to her father's side. And in one hot, sharp second, she understood exactly what kind of mistake this was. She moved fast. Outside, Whitmore was in the middle of saying, "Sir, if you do not leave the entrance voluntarily, you will be escorted from the property." Malik's phone stayed up. "From my own property amenity?" Whitmore's lips thinned. "From a restricted facility." Then the projector clicked on. Everyone turned. On the wide white stucco wall facing the pool, the image flickered into focus. At first it was just a spreadsheet too bright to read in full under the afternoon sun. Then Elise adjusted the contrast from inside. And suddenly, in letters large enough for half the pool deck to see, the live membership database appeared across the wall. There was a beat of silence, then another. Names, addresses, status markers. And right near the top, centered in the visible portion of the projection, unmistakable in bold black text against a pale background. Malik Carter, verified resident, pool access active. Below it, Naye Carter, household member, active. Loretta Carter, household member, active. A ripple went through the crowd. Real embarrassment now, real movement, real awareness. Whitmore turned so sharply he nearly lost his balance. "What the hell is this?" he snapped. Then Elise's voice rang out from the clubhouse entrance. The actual membership list. Heads turned again. Elise came walking toward the gate holding a laptop against her chest, face pale but composed. "And if anyone's interested," she said loudly enough for the onlookers to hear, "the live system also shows 3 active Black households omitted from the printed sheet Mr. Whitmore prepared." The silence that followed was total. Not because nobody understood, because everybody did. Whitmore's face changed color. Sharon stared at the projected wall, then at the clipboard in her hand, then at Whitmore. The security guard slowed to a stop, suddenly unsure who exactly he had been summoned to remove. Malik lowered his phone only slightly. Loretta stood straighter. Nia looked from the wall to her father, confused but sensing something had shifted. One of the white women near the gate spoke first. "Daniel," she said, voice thin with disbelief. "What does she mean, omitted?" Whitmore recovered the way men like him often do, by reaching for indignation before truth can settle. "This is being misrepresented," he said. "That sheet was provisional." Elise did not blink. "Then why are only Black households missing from the provisional list?" No one answered. A man by the umbrellas muttered, "Jesus." Another voice, female this time, said, "I knew something felt off when the Reynoldses were denied last month." More heads turned, because that was how prejudice cracked apart in public. Not all at once, but when one truth made room for the next one. Whitmore pointed toward the clubhouse. "Elise, this is completely inappropriate." "No," she said with surprising steadiness. "What's inappropriate is trying to block residents from entering a facility they pay for, and then pretending the system supports it." Sharon found her voice. "I was told this was the updated sheet." It was the first sentence she had spoken all afternoon that sounded genuinely human. Not kind, not innocent, but frightened. Whitmore rounded on her. "This is not the time." Malik stepped forward. Now when he spoke, he no longer sounded like a man asking for access. He sounded like a man documenting a public failure. "No," he said calmly. "This is exactly the time." He turned his phone fully toward the wall, capturing the projected list. Whitmore, the crowd, the gate, everything. Daniel Whitmore, HOA board president, denied access to a verified black homeowner and his family, despite active membership status. The live database is now visible. Would you like to explain the discrepancy? Whitmore said nothing. That was when Tom, the same white resident who had been waved through earlier, walked back from inside the pool gates with his wife Jennifer beside him. Tom looked at the wall, then at Malik, then at Whitmore. His expression hardened. "Open the gate," he said. Whitmore ignored him. Jennifer folded her arms. "Now, Daniel." A teenage girl near the entrance pulled out her own phone. Then another resident did the same, then another. The balance of the moment shifted permanently. Because exclusion loves privacy, it struggles under witnesses. Whitmore attempted one final retreat into authority. "We are not conducting neighborhood business by mob pressure." Loretta let out one low, incredulous laugh. "You thought it was fine when the mob was against us." A few people actually winced. Malik looked at Sharon. For the first time all afternoon, he spoke to her not as an obstacle, but as a person making a choice. "You have the button," he said. Sharon looked at Whitmore. Whitmore stared back, but his certainty was gone now. He looked like a man realizing too late that the room had changed sides. Sharon pressed the gate release. The lock buzzed. The iron gate swung open. Nia looked up at her father as if waiting for permission to believe this was real. Malik smiled at her, though his eyes still held heat. "Go ahead, baby." Nia rushed forward, then stopped halfway and turned back to take her grandmother's hand too. Loretta squeezed his shoulder as she passed. "I'll take her in," she said quietly. Malik nodded. He did not move. Not yet. He stood at the gate facing Whitmore, Sharon, Elise, and the watching residents while his daughter finally stepped into the place she should have been allowed to enter from the beginning. Then he said very clearly, "We're not done here." And they weren't. By evening, the video was everywhere. Not nationally, not yet, but all over Brookhaven. Neighborhood groups, local Facebook pages, parent chats, community forums. A short clip uploaded by one of the teenagers showed the exact moment the projected membership list lit up the wall with Malik's name on it, while Whitmore stood in frame. The caption read, "He lived there. They locked him out anyway." By morning, local news had it. Then regional stations picked it up. The headline varied depending on the outlet, but the shape of the story was the same. Black homeowner denied entry to private pool until live membership list exposes discrepancy. News crews stood outside Ashbourne Hills with microphones and carefully serious expressions. Residents who had never spoken publicly about anything in their lives suddenly found themselves being asked whether the community had a race problem. Some lied, some deflected, some said they were shocked. But enough people had seen enough that denial now required effort, and effort leaves fingerprints. Malik did not give his first interview immediately. He spent that night at home with Nia and Loretta. They ordered takeout. Nia asked why those people had not let them in. Loretta answered first, "Because some people decide who belongs before they know anything true." Malik sat very still at the kitchen table. Nia frowned. "But we do belong." "Yes," Malik said softly. "We do." She thought about that. Then with the brutal clarity children carry without knowing it, she asked, "Were they scared because we're black?" No parent is ever fully ready for that question. No matter how smart they are, no matter how successful, no matter how many doors they have opened. Malik felt grief move through him with almost physical force. Not because he had no answer, because he did. He reached over and took his daughter's hand. "Yes," he said. "Some of them were." Nia looked down. "I don't like that." "Me neither." Loretta spoke next, voice gentle and firm. "But listen to me, baby. Other people's prejudice does not tell you your value. It tells you their weakness." Nia looked at her grandmother, then at her father, and slowly nodded. That night, after she fell asleep, Malik sat alone on the back patio. The neighborhood was quiet in that curated suburban way that hid conflict under landscape lighting and trimmed hedges. His phone kept buzzing. Messages from friends, clients, two local reporters, a civil rights attorney, neighbors he had never met, and one message from a name he recognized only faintly. Elise Warren. It read, "I'm sorry, I should have noticed earlier. If you pursue action, I'll tell the truth." He stared at it a long time before replying. "Thank you. Tell it fully." The HOA emergency meeting was called 48 hours later. Attendance exceeded capacity. People who had never cared about governance suddenly cared a great deal when governance became impossible to separate from public disgrace. The clubhouse ballroom was packed. White couples in linen, older residents with folded agendas, younger families whispering, a few local reporters at the back, and Malik seated in the second row with Loretta on one side and attorney Vanessa Price on the other. Vanessa Price was a black civil rights attorney with a measured voice and a reputation for turning misunderstandings into legal records. On the stage sat the board. Daniel Whitmore looked tired for the first time. Not remorseful, just worn by consequences. The meeting began with procedural language: regret, review, administrative irregularities. Then Vanessa stood. "Let's not bury this in euphemism," she said. "My client, a black homeowner in good standing, was publicly denied access to a facility he pays for. He was treated as an intruder while white residents were admitted without verification. The individual responsible for the printed access list excluded active black households. We are here to determine whether this community intends to call that what it is." No one moved. No one coughed. No one dared create noise around the silence because the truth in the room had become too large. Elise testified next. Hands trembling only slightly, she described the live database, the printed weekend sheet, the omitted households, and the fact that Daniel Whitmore had personally assembled the provisional list the night before. Whitmore's attorney tried to frame it as administrative streamlining. Vanessa asked one question in response. "Can you identify a single white household in good standing omitted from the sheet?" The answer was no. Then came the worst part for Ashbourne Hills. Not for Malik, for them. Because once one person told the truth, others did too. A black delivery driver who had been stopped 3 times in the neighborhood while white contractors moved freely. A mixed-race family who had been repeatedly asked which house they were visiting. The Reynolds family Elise had mentioned, whose teenage son had been questioned at the tennis courts despite carrying a resident badge. A domestic worker who said Sharon had once told her to use the service entrance, even when accompanying the children of the family who employed her. One by one, the polished fiction of Ashbourne Hills being merely selective collapsed into something uglier and more honest. Not every resident had participated, but enough had looked away. And looking away is how these systems survive. When Malik finally spoke, he did not raise his voice. He did not perform anger for the room. He did not soften it either. He stood, buttoned his jacket, and said, "I did not move into this neighborhood to beg for access to what I pay for. I did not work for 20 years so my daughter could watch other children walk through a gate while she is told there must be some misunderstanding. This is not about a pool. It is about who gets presumed to belong and who gets required to prove it." He turned slightly, just enough to include the room. "And let me say something very clearly. My being calm at that gate was not proof that I was not harmed. It was proof that I understood exactly how quickly a black man's dignity can be used against him if he protects it too loudly." No one interrupted him. "I belong in Ashbourne Hills because I bought my home there. My mother belongs because she is my family. My daughter belongs because she deserves a childhood untouched by the fear that every locked door is really about her. And every black family omitted, questioned, redirected, or watched more closely than your white neighbors belongs to." He paused. Then he said the sentence the reporters would quote for days. "If your community only works when black people stay grateful, quiet, and screened at the gate, then what you built here is not a community. It is a hierarchy." The meeting ended badly for Whitmore. Within 24 hours, he resigned. Sharon was suspended pending review, though Malik noticed the language around her was softer. That too was familiar. Systems often sacrifice a face before they examine a structure. Malik did not let them stop there. Vanessa Price filed formal complaints. The city's Fair Housing Office opened an inquiry. A private civil suit followed. The HOA was forced into external review. Access policies were rewritten. Resident verification procedures were standardized. A diversity oversight committee was created, though Malik privately distrusted committees created only after scandal. And then something more meaningful happened. The black families in Ashbourne Hills found one another. Not because they had never seen each other before, because pain names people. The Reynoldses, Dr. Simone Avery from Crestline Court, Marcus and Elena Brooks from Willow Bend, 3 households omitted from Whitmore's list, then 4, then 6, then more. They gathered first in Malik's backyard one Sunday afternoon. Nothing formal, food on folding tables, kids playing tag in the grass, adults talking in the low, truthful voices people use when they are finally tired of pretending isolated incidents are isolated. Loretta sat near the patio fan and watched it all with the expression of someone who had waited a long time to see people stop apologizing for what had been done to them. "You know what the problem is with places like this?" Marcus Brooks said, holding a paper plate in one hand. "They invite you to succeed here, but not to alter the picture." Dr. Avery nodded. "They're comfortable with black excellence in brochures, less comfortable with it next door." Malik listened, not because he had no words, because leadership begins with hearing what was already true before you arrived. By the end of the evening, what began as shared outrage had become something stronger: intent. They would not just react the next time, they would shape the place. Within 3 months, 3 new black residents joined HOA committees. 2 ran for board positions, 1 won immediately, the next one after a runoff so tense half the neighborhood forgot how post-racial they claimed to be. Malik did not originally plan to run. He truly did not. He had a company to manage, a daughter to raise, a life already full. But then Nia came home one afternoon from school with a drawing. It showed a swimming pool under a bright sun, a gate open wide, 3 stick figures holding hands, her dad, and her grandmother. Above them she had written in large uneven letters, "We can go in now." Malik stared at the drawing for a long time. Then he looked at his daughter. "Baby," he said, "why did you write that?" She shrugged in the careless way children do before saying something devastating. "Because before, it looked like they didn't want us there. Now maybe they know." He smiled, but his throat tightened. That night he filed the paperwork to run for HOA board president. The campaign divided the neighborhood exactly along the lines everyone claimed did not exist. Some residents said he was exactly what Ashbourne Hills needed: calm, accomplished, fair, impossible to dismiss without exposing why. Others said he was making everything about race, which is what people often say when race was already shaping everything and they preferred not to lose the benefits of silence. Whitmore's allies backed a white candidate named Paul Henley, who campaigned on unity and moving forward, the kind of language designed to skip accountability and still sound noble. Malik campaigned differently. He knocked on doors. He listened. He asked residents what safety meant, what fairness meant, what neighborhood meant. And when people tried to reduce the pool incident to a one-time embarrassment, he answered the same way every time. Public humiliation was the symptom. The problem was the assumption underneath it. Elise volunteered quietly. Not because it repaired everything, because truth demands more than one brave afternoon. Tom and Jennifer volunteered too. So did a surprising number of white residents who had not realized until the projector lit up that neutrality had mostly served the people already holding power. Election night came in early autumn. The clubhouse ballroom filled again, but the mood this time was different. Less polished, more real. When the final votes were counted, Malik Carter won by 83 votes. Not barely, clearly. There was applause, some sincere, some polite, some absent entirely. Malik stood at the podium where Daniel Whitmore had once ruled by confidence and omission. He looked out at the room. His daughter sat in the front row, swinging her feet, wearing a little blue dress. Loretta beside her, proud and unreadable in the way only mothers who have seen too much can be. Malik adjusted the microphone and said, "I did not seek this role because I needed anyone in this room to validate that I belong here." The room went still. "I sought it because belonging should never again depend on who is standing at a gate, holding a clipboard, deciding whether your face matches their expectations." Then he looked directly at the residents gathered there and said, We are going to build a neighborhood where rules are visible, dignity is not selective, and no child has to ask her father if she did something wrong because an adult brought prejudice to a locked door. That time, the applause was stronger. Not unanimous, but strong. Change almost never begins with unanimity. It begins when truth becomes harder to punish than to face. The next summer, Ashbourne Hills held its pool opening day under new leadership. No handwritten provisional sheets, no private filtering, no selective recognition. Digital check-in for everyone. Clear policies posted publicly. Audit trails on access records. Independent review on all amenity complaints. It was not revolutionary, that was the point. Justice often looks dramatic in headlines. In real life, it also looks like systems that no longer leave room for somebody's bias to masquerade as policy. Malik arrived early that morning with Nia and Loretta. The sun was warm, the water bright, the air full of sunscreen and chlorine, and children's laughter. At the entrance stood a new attendant, college-age, nervous, earnest. He smiled and said, "Good morning, Mr. Carter." Malik smiled back. "Morning." The attendant scanned the 3 digital passes and opened the gate. No hesitation, no performance, no suspicion, just access. Nia stepped through first this time with complete confidence, then stopped and spun around dramatically. "Daddy," she announced, "you coming?" Malik laughed. "I'm coming." Loretta paused at the threshold. For just a second, she rested her hand on the gate. Not because it was heavy, because memory was. She looked at her son. "You know," she said, "your father would have had a lot to say about this." Malik smiled softly. "I know. He'd have been proud of you." That landed deeper than he let show. They walked in together. Later, while Nia splashed in the shallow end with other children, Malik sat under a white umbrella and watched the pool deck fill. Black families, white families, Asian families, Latino families. Children running without the burden adults hand them, parents talking, teenagers laughing too loudly, lifeguards blowing whistles. Ordinary life. And it struck him that this was what the fight had really been for. Not revenge, not even vindication, though that mattered. Space, unquestioned, undiminished space, the right to enter without performance, the right to exist without being filtered through suspicion, the right to let joy be simple. A little after noon, Elise approached with 2 iced teas. "Peace offering?" she asked. Malik took one. "You already made the important choice." She nodded once. "Still, I should have spoken sooner." "Maybe," he said, "but you spoke when it counted." She looked out at the pool. "I didn't understand how much gets hidden by procedure." Malik followed her gaze. "That's why people hide inside it." She gave a rueful half-smile. A few minutes later, Tom and Jennifer waved from nearby chairs. Dr. Avery was helping Loretta set up snacks. Marcus Brooks was arguing cheerfully with someone over grill times near the clubhouse patio. The place looked different now, not because the stone columns had changed, because the terms of belonging had. Nia came running up dripping water. "Daddy, watch this!" Before he could answer, she sprinted back and cannonballed into the pool with all the fearless joy of a child who had not let cruelty become her definition of the world. Water splashed high. Kids shrieked. Loretta laughed out loud. And Malik sat back in his chair, closed his eyes for one brief second, and let himself feel it. Not relief exactly. Something better. A hard-won peace. The kind earned when you refuse to shrink. When you refuse to leave quietly. When you force a place to either live up to its own language or expose what that language was hiding. The headlines later told a cleaner version of the story. Black homeowner wins HOA presidency after pool discrimination scandal. Neighborhood reforms access policies. Civil settlement reached. Mandatory anti-discrimination training adopted. All true. But the truest version was simpler. A black father brought his daughter to a pool on a hot summer day. White people in power looked at him and decided he did not belong. He refused to let their prejudice define the moment. The truth was projected large enough for everyone to see, and what was meant to shame him ended up exposing them. Because the final weakness of prejudice is this: it depends on darkness, confusion, and silence. The moment the full list is projected on the wall, it has nowhere left to hide. And if this story moved you, subscribe, like the video, and stay close. There are more stories like this one waiting.